You could ask, is Poincaré a modern? Or is he, as some scholars have said, a reactionary? I think the terms of that are really misplaced. There are more than one way to be a modern. And Poincaré was willing to challenge even very deep aspects of classical physics. He wanted to make simultaneity, time and space, connect to procedures that could really be done. In fact, procedures that he had done, the kind of detailed work about coordinating clocks to map the world. So Poincaré was willing to accept Lorentz's idea that objects contracted as they moved through the ether, and when he extended these ideas to telegraphers as they were coordinating clocks moving through the ether, well, even then he was willing to challenge the old idea of time and to say this notion of Lorentz's local time actually could be given a quite physical significance, namely that if you sent a light signal from one clock to another clock as they both moved through the ether, it would take longer for the light signal to travel as it beat against the apparent wind of the ether. So Poincaré was willing in all sorts of ways to challenge established certainties. But is he Einsteinian? Well, we'll talk about what Einstein stood for in the lectures to come. But Einstein famously denied the existence of the ether, and Poincaré was never willing to do that. He knew perfectly well you couldn't have direct access to the ether's properties, but he thought it helped give us the intuitions that we needed to go on and build the physics that were necessary. It would be, I think, a little bit like saying to a carpenter, could you build a house without a hammer? And the carpenter might say, I could, but why would I do that? Poincaré had that view about the ether. It was a useful notion that helped us advance our understanding, and it had proven itself time and time again in Maxwell's discovery of electric waves, in his own work that gave a physical meaning to the coordination of clocks, this idea of local time as the clocks move through the ether. Poincaré never gave up the distinction between true time, the time in the ether rest frame, and the apparent time everywhere else. So in certain ways, Poincaré hovered in an intermediate zone, borrowing some aspects of the classical intuitions and concepts, like a true time, like the ether, and in other ways perfectly willing to challenge the older notions of physics, the idea that space and length was given once and for all, where the time needn't be corrected for motion. These things were points that Poincaré broke with in past physics. But this whole story that we've been engaged in, this notion in the late 19th century that time is connected to the most physical questions of engineering and trains, of mapping the world, this idea that it was attached to philosophy, this idea that it was attached to anarchism and the unification of political order, that it played a role in fiction and so much else, is evocative in a way that pure analytic scholarship can't quite grasp in its entirety. And partly motivated by that, for years I've worked on a project with the great artist William Kentridge, and we produced something, an installation piece, called The Refusal of Time. And as a way out of this discussion of the blowing up of the meridian, the fearful reactions to that, the idea of establishing time anew in different contexts, in relativity and eventually in black holes, we did this piece. And in shorthand way, on a single channel, not in the 5 channels that it was originally on in the installation, I want to show you a bit of what we did. So this is from Refusal of Time.
아이고.